Okay, welcome everyone to the ASA Soccer Advising Podcast. I'm your host, Lino Valerani, and today we have our guest is Paul Giannini. Paul is the current head coach of the women's varsity soccer team at Mohawk College in Hamilton, Ontario. Also sits on the board of the Hamilton United Soccer Club, and he also owns and operates Absolute Soccer, which has a number of stores. I think it's 5 stores in total. So, Paul, thanks for being on today. Maybe you can give us a brief bio of yourself, how it all started for you in soccer, how it went from playing to then coaching, and then how you got into the retail side of things and getting into selling soccer equipment, soccer apparel, all of that, because it seems like you are one-stop shopping when it comes to soccer. That's for sure.
I started coaching, because playing, obviously always I had a passion to play soccer, right? In Hamilton, it's a big thing. It was always huge, cultural. So, played growing up. Right? I mean, obviously still playing timers, so I'll play as long as I can, right? I think what came next was the store. We were driving to Bolton to buy soccer shoes, and at that time, we were talking. There was no store in Hamilton, and Hamilton had 30,000 registered soccer players, and the largest old timers per capita, largest old timers league in the world. So we thought, there's got to be a need for a store here, especially when we're driving an hour just to buy boots. Half my team would go to Bolton. So so we decided we opened it like within 2 weeks of driving. That last time that I remember going to Bolton, we were like, "Okay, this is crazy." We opened a store about a month later, and we've expanded to 3 family owned and then 2 flagship stores. But so that's been a good ride. And then the intention, I like to consider myself a student of the game. Where I love, where people are watching a game and thinking maybe at the time, oh, soccer's boring, and it was a boring game. I kind of like watching all the stuff that's going on in the game, all the tactics and stuff. So, when my kids got into soccer, then I saw an opportunity. I thought, we were at a little club at the time, Stony Creek. I think we were a thousand registered players in total. My daughter was U7, so I decided I went to the club and asked if I can do a U8 rep team, and they said yes, sure, might as well give it a start. And from that team, from that little club, we went on, and by U14 we will go in U13. It was the first year of SRSL. Playing against the Bramptons, the Erin Mills, and the Oakvilles. We didn't lose a game in the top division, and we ended up the following year winning nationals. So it's just been, from there, it was a cool ride with that group, and every player went to the States, Division One. Actually, only my captain turned it down and stayed, but yeah, it was fun. And at that point, I did League One at Hamilton. We were the first League One team with me and Fran, and tried jumping in at OPDL because it all changed and everything's changed about the game, about the how the leagues are. So I tried that a little bit, and I didn't feel it was for me anymore. It just seemed like there was a lot more, charging that kind of money these players are paying, and the expectations, and it was just a lot. It was just a lot. I don't know. I don't want to call it pressure, but a lot more parent involvement, a lot more that kind of stuff. So I stepped back, and then Mohawk College asked me to apply, so I applied, and that was 5 years ago, and so I've been coaching there for the last 5 years.
Yeah,
And
that's quite the journey for sure. When I talk to people around the GTA, the Hamilton area, when I'm talking to people in the soccer world, I don't think there's anyone that doesn't know you, because so you've touched players by from coaching. You have the store, you're a varsity head coach. There isn't many people that when I mention your name, like that don't know you. Like when I'm saying,
Hmm.
you know Paul from Absolute, oh yeah. Or do you know
Yeah.
Paul, he's the head coach of Mohawk? Oh yeah, I know him. Right. So definitely entrenched in the soccer community for sure. So you've always coached girls?
I tried boys for a couple years, and I went back. I just maybe just I have a son and a daughter, but I just felt I personally best suited on the female side. I
Right.
feel I feel I can just maybe the way I connect with my daughter allowed me to connect in a good way with female players.
Right. So let's kind of get into more of the coaching side of things for you. So when you're because you've coached at such a high level, when you're valuing players, like what are you looking for? What is there like one or two real things, or is it like a whole, like does there have to be a whole package when you're looking at a player? Like what are you looking for when you're evaluating?
You mean like watching them on the field?
Yeah.
You know, I personally like watching a lot of off the ball stuff,
Right.
right? Like I really do. Like to me, I that's my biggest focus, and no different when coaching, and we score a big goal. You rarely will ever hear me address the goal scorer first. I love the player that starts the play off. I love the player that opens space in order for us to make that play. So when I'm watching players, I'm to evaluate. I'm looking at those same things. I'm looking at what they're doing off the ball. Obviously you want to see intensity. You want to see athleticism. You want to see players. You can tell when a player is making decisions. Two steps ahead of like already knows what they're going to be doing with the ball. Right, decisions already made before receiving the ball, as opposed to you know receiving a ball and then looking at options. Right. So those are kind of things I enjoy. What I enjoy in a player, and then of course like commitment and all that follows next, right?
Yeah.
Communication for sure.
When you see a player that is struggling, let's say maybe you have a player that has a ton of talent, but for whatever reason starts to lack in confidence, and you're thinking like, how do you help a player like that? How do you help a player that has the capability, maybe shows well in practice, seems to be relaxed, and then goes into a game and just tenses up, freezes up, worries about making mistakes, not playing free, like how do you address that as a head coach?
A lot of that comes in the training part, talking, just being able to keep encouraging them. Everybody makes mistakes. I think what I try to do a lot of times is taking losses on more on the coach. You know what I mean? Taking accepting responsibility as it was our coaching responsibility, not so much as the player's error or mistakes are going to happen all the time, right? I try to always use the theory on having them understand that these are moments that you gotta. It's like you're part of your story. Being able to say, "Hey, I made these errors," and then I was able to bounce back the next couple games and impact and win a game for the team. So it's just being able to understand that there's going to be a better day. The next day could be a better one. It's not everybody's going to is going to be at the top of their game every game. So you gotta just work through it.
Right. So you're encouraging them instead of
You have to.
potentially, penalizing them for not performing, right?
It's all encouragement.
Right.
It's all encouragement. It's all trying to rebuild. Listen, some everybody's different. Some you can do whatever, and they're in their own head, and it ain't gonna have success trying to rebuild that. I look at it as a lot of times is you have to put players in in a position on the field or at a time of a game that they're going to be successful. Every player. So if I have a player who's struggling and maybe it's, maybe they're normally able to beat players 1v1 and they're struggling against a certain defender and now they're getting frustrated, then you have to look at, can I switch her sides? Can I play her in a different position or play her in a different role, or just, give her a task and say the next 3 balls, can we just make a simple pass, make the simplest pass you can make, and maybe sometimes that helps build them up and the next play is a little more successful.
Yeah, I think definitely we need more of that. I find over the years that winning has become such a big thing. Even when I was going through it with my daughter, not that the coaches weren't encouraging, because they were, but I just saw it kind of like from a different lens, from an overview, just seeing that girls, because I was on the girls' side, being demoralized by
Mm-hmm.
by coaches, right? Not letting the players make mistakes, in a game, right? And a lot of coaching from the sidelines, like a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've seen that so much, right? Like, just let them play, and like,
Well, listen, it's funny, because I think some kids react and need that little bit of that extra coaching, and some don't, right? And that's the difference of understanding the female. I mean, when you're coaching females, some you need to be on, and some you need to back away, and
right,
so it's no different watching EPL or Syria, and you watch one coach like running up and down the sidelines, dictating and joysticking every pass and play, where a Ferguson would sit in the stands and watch the game, right? So
yeah.
it's all style, different coaching styles, and how players react to it. It's different.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you got to know your players, right? Because that's exactly true. Like, some players, they want that, they need that
They
push,
need,
right?
yeah,
And there's
yeah,
others that, they don't want to hear it. They just leave me alone, let me play, right?
yeah.
You know, I
I,
know it's funny, when I played, I had a coach. All he did, I swear, I felt like I was the only one being yelled at the whole game.
yeah, because you
The
only hear your
whole
name.
game. And he would put me back on the next game. But I remember I would play, it would come off, and I think, after the game or whatever, and I think, this guy hates me. He doesn't even like anything about the way I play. But there I am, the next game starting again, and he's barking at me basically the whole game. And then some other players, he wouldn't even say anything. You tell them how great they played, right?
Yeah.
But I kept going back. I don't know if I was just because I really wanted to play, and I wanted to play with this group that I was with. So, but yeah, I guess it's different. It's different for every player, right? Now,
Yeah, maybe that coach felt you could handle it more than anybody else, and you
well,
know,
growing up like we grew up, where
yeah,
you know you got yelled at for looking at someone the wrong way. You were
right,
used to it, right? It wasn't
yeah,
like a shock to the system.
right.
Right? So now you coach boys for a little bit. So what do you think is the I know that
I'll
there's
tell you, it's funny.
differences
I'll tell you
between
my
coaching
this
boys
is
and
my
girls.
yeah, this is my analogy, right? So if on a girls' team, if you just lost a game that you should have won, and you sit your whole team down, and there may have been a couple players, 2 players that really put zero effort in, or you felt didn't give you nothing and enough, right? And at the end of the game, and you say to your team, and you say, listen, we lost this game because there was a couple of you that just didn't put in the effort, that really didn't care or didn't come prepared, and it's really disappointing. Every one of those girls will leave, go in the car, cry on their when they get in the car, and say, I know he was talking about me. And it could have been your very best player, and she's going to say, he was talking about me. Where on the boys, you can say that exact same thing, and they'll get in the car, and every one of them will say, he was talking about Joey or Sammy, or it wasn't them, no matter what. He could have been, and I remember having that conversation with my boy, and say, because this is why it happened, because that exact thing happened, and my son that game was absolutely terrible. Didn't even look like he wanted to be there, and he says, he goes, Dad, you were talking about so and so and so and so, and I'm like, no, I was talking about you, But they don't get boys just don't like girls take every word you say like you're talking to them, and even if it's general, they feel you're looking at them. So I try very, very hard to make eye contact with every single one while I'm talking, but
honestly, that's a great analogy, because everything you're saying, I'm reliving in my head with my daughter.
yeah,
Right?
exactly right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
She'd come off and she'd be upset, and I would say to her, "What are you upset about? I know you guys lost, okay, but
yeah.
you played great." No,
She could have been the
I
best
made
player on the yeah.
that mistake that cost the goal, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And then you're debriefing all the way home. But you're right. Whereas when my son played,
Yeah.
they're guys. They don't internalize things like,
It was everybody else's fault.
yeah. Well, that guy, he didn't, because my son was a goalie. Well, he didn't block a shot. He pulled a flamenco right in front of me.
Right?
I was screened by 5 guys or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
know that is so true. That is true. It's a whole different style of coaching
Yeah.
when you're dealing with the girls compared to the boys.
Yeah. And listen, the girls do everything so extremely literal, where, the boys, I think, are easier to, if you have a good boys team, I think it's easier to let them play, right?
Right.
And they figure it out, where the girls are listening to a message you said 2 games ago, and everything's changed in this game, but they're still focused on what you said 2 games ago. Oh, you told me not to go wide. I mean, that was like 2 weeks ago, but they still hold on to
Right.
everything. So
Yeah.
it's, I find female soccer, you kind of have to always, but I tell the players all the time, I know you're a good player when I tell you something, or maybe they're with the ball, and I'm get excited, and I'm like yelling out an instruction, and they see it, but do something different, right? And I'm like, then I know you're a very good player, right? Because
Right.
you're able to, not just do what you hear, able to switch off and find something that probably worked better, right?
Right.
Where
Yeah.
boys kind of do that automatically, no matter what.
Yeah.
Girls, it's more, they hear something, they do it. One girl yells pass, and so they pass it to them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That is true. Yeah. Just thinking about watching females play, the girls that did stand out were the girls that kind of would kind of see the game and then react to it and be able to do something that was completely different from
Yeah,
what most of the other girls were doing, just running down the wing and maybe just crossing the ball in, and then
yeah,
the same thing over and over, right?
right,
The pattern of the game never really changed, right?
right.
So, it was predictable. And sometimes a lot of times actually, when I was watching games on both sides of both teams,
Right.
they were just coming at each other the exact same way the whole game. There was never really any, I don't want the creative players, but the maybe just not wanting to take those risks,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Where boys are more, they're more, they'll take the risks,
All the time.
right? And
Yeah.
and they'll take, the coach saying, why'd you do that? And they're like, well, I don't care. I'm gonna try it again, right? Whereas a girl will be like, oh, I don't know if I should do that again.
Right. I know. Right. It's true.
Yeah.
So anyways, I found, I found, like, even nowadays, these boys are like, they're just like the maybe from coaching girls, and I go try to coach the boys, and the energy level, I felt like these kids are like, they just buzz. And
Right.
so I took better to, stick with the female side.
Yeah. So let's talk about that team that you took to nationals. You won everything, right? And the whole team, except for one, you said, the captain, who decided to stay in Canada. The rest of the team went down and played NCAA,
All Division One. Yeah.
all Division One. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
you were the catalyst, from what I understand, that helped those girls get to those
Mhm.
schools. So, like, was it through just connections you had made over the years that you knew these coaches, you knew these programs, or was it a combination of, yeah, I know some of these coaches, I know some of these programs, and I'm going to reach out these other schools and these other coaches and make the connections and see if there's a fit for, because obviously these girls were talented. It
Yeah.
wasn't like you were pushing players that couldn't play at that level, right?
Right.
But you were the one, you were the catalyst behind that, which is honestly, there's not many coaches that would spend that much time doing that, for their players. Not because they don't want to, but maybe they don't have the time, they don't have the connections, they don't have the know-how,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
so how did that come about?
I'm always talking to coaches. So I was always picking people's brains, always getting ideas. And I kind of came up with a strategy of I literally would go to every targeted Division I school. You know, at first, all the players, we did a little poll: who wants to play in the U.S., who wants to stay in Canada, and at that time, everybody, it was a thing of they all wanted to play Division I soccer. So what I did was, we started at I think 13, just to play in some US tournaments at that time was to build up your ranking in order to get into the big tournaments. And then we started going to the Disneys and Castle and a few of these tournaments. But what I did was every targeted university, I got the head coach's email, head recruiter or head assistant coach email, and I put it in at that time I used something Connect. It was a email platform
Okay.
that
Yeah.
allowed me to email every coach at once do one, attach the profile, attach our schedules, all the player profiles, team information, team bio, and I'd be able to send it out to every single coach of every Division I school that we felt was a targeted for our girls, and I could see who opened it. I could see what player they clicked on. So if we were getting multiple schools clicking on specific kids, then we would tell those players to reach out, direct now, right? So we try to get them to connect direct. And then I would start, trying to connect with those coaches. It wasn't, when I started, I didn't know any of them. And as the 3 years went on, I knew like 100 coaches. It was pretty cool. We were talking to Harvard, Notre Dame, all these big schools all the time, right? As we were even in tournaments, after the first game, we would send out, how results of the first game. And we were getting, some games, 150 Division I schools out there watching all in one game, right?
Right.
So it just kind of got the ball really rolling and quickly. I believe we had our first girl committed and verbally committed at that time. They were allowed in grade 9.
Wow.
So it changed. The rules changed where now they're not allowed to talk to them to grade 11. But
Right.
we had kids grade 9, grade 10. They're already verbally committed to schools.
Right.
So yeah, listen, it was a lot of hours. It was a lot of me making sure girls, even, I kept charts on what schools were interested in what players, and I was making sure those players were following up and responding to the coaches. Now it seems, you can email 100 players and you might get 5 responses. So or I made sure my players responded no matter what, right? Like I was like, no, this is a responsibility. We're all gonna make sure we respond to every coach, because it may not be a school that you're interested in, but maybe one of our other players are. So let's make sure we keep everybody in good standings, right?
Yeah. So in today's landscape, what would you say in terms of when should players start to reach out to, if they want to make a move, even if they want to play, U sports, but let's just say NCAA. When should players start to when do you think players should start to reach
Well,
out?
it's never too early, really. Like, but you're safe once you start. Once you start, grade 11, it's early enough. Like you can go early grade. A lot of people start now in grade 10. Even I when I'm on a lot of these platforms for players, you see them in the 2029 graduate. Well, that's probably grade 9 right now, right? So we're not like, for me, I'm not paying attention to that, right? That early, right? But getting the experience, getting the top coaches at any age is, I mean, the earlier the better, I guess. As long as you know that you're not going to get a lot of traction 4 years, in grade 9, you're grade 10, and in US they can't respond to you to June of your grade 11th year, I think it is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but OUA can talk to you earlier, but or OCAA can talk to you earlier.
Right.
And you know what? Maybe that's kind of like, I would say, hey, get the experience of talking to any coach,
Yeah. Do you think now compared to then, do you think more, again, we'll just stick with more on the female side, but do you think more players are staying here or staying home to play as opposed to going down to the States? Or do you still see that big draw that seemed to be bigger, like in my perspective, it seemed to be like a big thing. Every player, I should say, was always saying, "I want to go D1. I want to go D1." Do you still think that that's true, or do you see a bit of a mix now where girls want to stay here?
Well, you know what? I think they all start out wanting to go, right? And then I think you're realizing how much more difficult it is now, and not difficult is just the start of it. Right? I mean, like, when my girls went, there wasn't, like, I mean, almost everyone was full scholarship. Like, I mean, like, that's everything. Some of them were even getting allowances to buy a computer and every year, like, everything was covered, right? Now, a lot of them are paying a lot of money, but if you're staying home, you're probably paying a lot of money too, right? But
Yeah.
by paying, housing and all that stuff. So you're kind of, it's kind of similar, but I see more kids now willing to give D3 NAIA a chance, where, I remember going through it, we didn't even have really D2 schools reach out to us because they felt that they had no chance anyways, right? But
Right.
these girls were all going to go D1.
Right.
But you're seeing more and more Europeans, like, you look at some of these teams like Syracuse, there might be, half a dozen Americans on the team and the rest are European, right? So
Right.
you're seeing more and more Europeans come, and a lot of the landscape has changed too. Like, kids, when they were going 5, 6 years, 7 years ago, a coach, even if there was a coaching change, a new coach couldn't come in and release a player. Those players were guaranteed. They can tell them not to come to training anymore. You're not going to be part of the team, and if you want to leave, go ahead. Otherwise, you stay and you still get the scholarship. Where now most schools, they're telling kids in January. Some schools are telling kids in January, you had a great first season, and then come April, they decided to cut them because they were going to go look on the portal, right?
Right. That's
So a
been a
lot of a lot has changed.
Yeah, that's been a big thing, right? That transfer portal for sure, and the Europeans coming
Yeah,
over, and maybe kids taking a gap year. I think, and then playing somewhere else, maybe playing in Europe and then coming back. And but now with this proposed new rules that you have to start when you graduate high school, or
or
when you're
19.
19, and
Yeah,
then you have 5 years, and there's no red shirt, and
right.
there's only like asterisks in terms of how you can delay. If someone, if there was, if they had a child or something like that in between, they could take a break or something. But so it definitely makes it that 5 years is 5 years, right? So
Yeah,
and you're not getting that 23-year-old player anymore, 24-year-old player, right?
right, right.
So definitely has changed.
But you're seeing more players coming back, right? And
Yeah.
listen, some players have the greatest experience of their life, right? Like I had a lot of players that absolutely loved it, and then some, that didn't have the greatest experience.
Right.
Only one came back, but that was during COVID, and it was more, wanting to be around family. but now, you mean, I see plenty coming back or transferring, or like a lot of transfers, but coaches are not, coaches are, you look now in Division 1, every year, 2 years, 3 years, coaches are changing schools like all the time, where before, the same coach would be at a school for 10 years, 15 years, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of impacting the players as well, right?
Yeah. Well, you're starting to see, I definitely see girls coming back. My daughter, was at Mac, and, she was saying to me the other day, oh, there's 3 or 4 girls coming. They had, I think, 1 or 2 last year, and now they've got another 3 or 4 coming in this year that I guess for whatever reason, maybe they weren't playing, or maybe they just weren't happy there. They had a homesick, or maybe they want to switch programs. Another, the soccer becomes maybe secondary, and they want to focus in on a different
Mm-hmm.
on a program that they, as a career, they're looking to move on. So there is a lot of that happening from what I'm understanding right across in terms of youth sports, where girls are coming back to play, and I think it's definitely helping the youth sports landscape in terms of the quality of players in the soccer. So what do you think about that when you see now? Let's leave the high end Division 1 female schools out of it, right? That
Yep.
top echelons, but that next group down, maybe the mid to lower pack teams. And then when you see that, you compare it to U Sports, and you compare it to Canadian college soccer. Like, how would you, in terms of if you were to value that, like, is there a big gap from each, from NCAA mid to lower pack teams to high end U Sports and high end college, Ontario college programs? Do you see big gaps, or do you think it's more narrow than
No,
it's been?
it's not big gaps at all. And I mean, like, a lot of these O teams could probably compete against most Division 1 teams. Other than the big two, couple conferences there. But in general, the rest of them, yeah, for sure, they can compete. It's good. It's the soccer. Even also the college, in the last 5 years, it's gotten better and better and better. And I think a lot of it has to do with, people are just starting to become even more aware on what college offers. You can get a degree out of college. It's most of the times it's less expensive than the university. It's a great option, and more hands-on. But I think, yeah, that stigma of university, have to be at a university, is kind of dying a little bit. So you're seeing a lot higher quality players coming into OCA too.
When I look back at all the work that you put into getting all of those players recruited, I think your daughter included, right?
No, my daughter tore her ACL,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Unfortunately,
So,
she tore her ACL, and then she found in her rehabilitation, she found a love in working out. And for her, that, going to the gym every day, going for runs,
right.
that became her love, her first love, over, and it started to replace soccer. And
Right.
I think by 16, 15, 16, she was like, she didn't want to play anymore.
Right.
So and that was fine. I mean, I've always told my kids, I'll give you a start of something, of a direction, but it's up to you guys, and make your own decisions.
Right.
So yeah, she stopped playing, and she's what, 26 right now, and still goes to the gym, and every, 5 times a week, and so.
Right. Yeah. I know. And that's the thing too, right? It's got to be in you. It's got to be intrinsic, right? And we could go into a whole different area with that as well. But I want to stay on this. Like, so you navigated everything basically from start to finish for obviously the players, but also for the parents, right?
Hmm.
Where I think that's when, like, when I when I look back, I wish that, again, not to say that my daughter had very, very good coaches, but we didn't have anyone that was helping to
Mm-hmm.
help my daughter get recruited in any way. So I was doing it all, and I was behind. I was behind the eight ball. I remember talking to some of the parents, and I was saying, "Oh, we're thinking about going to this ID camp," and I think it was Buffalo State. I think it was. They were having an ID camp. I said, "I think we're going to go." I think, in my head, I'm thinking, "Oh, maybe they'll like my daughter. She's really fast, whatever, all this stuff, right?" And his dad turns to me and he goes, "Lino, they're already looking at girls 2 years younger, right? Like your daughter's going into grade 11. Yeah, it was grade 11 she was going into. Like he was saying, like, so I felt like I was having trouble navigating helping her, right? And that's what we're looking to alleviate for parents at ASA, as we're trying to, and help coaches as well. So we're trying to navigate things for parents, help their players to, move on if they want to move on and play at the next level, if they're able to, if they have the talent and the work ethic, and they want to go and move on from grassroots and play NCAA, play U Sports, play college, Ontario College. So that's what we're going to try and do and help as we move forward. So our goal is to make things clear for parents and players, and
Yeah.
and help clubs, right? Because some clubs might have a recruiting coordinator. You hear it more in the United States than you do in Canada. So
Mm-hmm.
they need someone like us, but a lot of clubs don't, So, and the coaches and technical directors, and they don't have the time, and they're not going to spend the time trying to get their players recruited. And the high end players, super high end players that are going, provincial Excel and DC, those players, they don't need our services because they're already being sought after by the schools down there, right? And by clubs. So yeah, so that's basically what we're trying to do on this end, and I think that we've taken the right steps. We're moving forward with hiring in the United States. We're moving forward with hiring in Canada. So I think going going forward, I think it's going to be a needed service for a lot of young players, both male and female. I know today we talked a lot about the female side because both of us were part of that, and we both still are. My daughter hasn't played because she's been injured for 2 years. That's a whole other thing. And you're still coaching at the college level.
The landscape has completely changed now, right? So you need, like, these players need representation, and it's not going to come from coaches, right? When I did this, I did this as a volunteer. I didn't get paid $1, and now to be at that high, that top level stream for player pathway, these coaches are paid coaches, but most in like these OPDL clubs or some other academy avenues, they're doing multiple teams. They don't have or are not even interested in doing all this extra stuff, right? And I don't blame them. I mean, like, but it's kind of become, their job is to coach, and that's what they're gonna do. So the players really do, these ID camps and these showcase more local stuff. Those are also great avenues. I think it's so overwhelming. Like we just brought on a head recruiter for Mohawk, and more of a younger female ex-player, played OUA, played Mohawk, can connect a little more personally, one-on-one with the girls better. And she made a funny comment. She goes, "I could just move out here to Toronto for 2 months straight, and every weekend there's another, all these FTF, FMS, there's so many of them, right? That she
Yeah.
goes, I could spend the entire 2 months and every weekend be at a different show, be at a different event."
Right.
But so the players, yeah, coaches are not gonna, don't have the same, the same. I don't want to call it ability. It's not about ability. It's the capacity to do it. So, like what you're doing now, these are for sure avenues that they should be considering, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely touching on going to the ID camps just with my own experience. I remember my daughter, they would have games event first. They would do all the kind of skills and drill stuff, and then they would have games at the end, and they would split up all these players, let's just say whatever, 50 to 80 players sometimes. And there she played right back or left back, and there would be five or six of them on each team that would play that position, and they would switch themselves. The coaches would say, just switch yourself. You get tired, make a switch, right? And I remember standing there watching, and my daughter didn't get on for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And because she's shy, she
Yeah.
was standing there, and the more aggressive girls would just jump in front of her or wouldn't come off. And then
Yeah.
the ID camp would be over. And then you get in the car, and I would say to her, why didn't you get on? Like, you didn't really get a chance to show these. And she kind of just looked at me and said, well, the other girl just went in front of me. And you're like, oh, okay, but so there's that component, that the shyness, the maybe you're not as aggressive as a person. You kind of get lost in the shuffle of these ID camps if no one's really watching you.
Yeah. Listen, ID camps in the US in the 10, 12 years that I've been, entrenched in all this, I've yet to hear of one player go to an ID camp and get a spot on a team, like
Right.
it just doesn't happen. ID camps are, the main purpose of ID camp is, they need to it's a funding, additional funding for the coaches, right?
Right.
And I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. I'm sure it has, but the chances of going to an ID camp and impacting it so much that you're now getting an offer is very, 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 very rare.
Right.
Yeah. So, and many go to probably ID camps to schools that probably are really a little beyond their reach,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
everybody wants to go to Notre Dame or Penn State's or Duke's ID camp, or,
Right.
you know, but if you go in just for the experience, that's one thing. But if you go in thinking you're going to come back with a scholarship, it's a little
Yeah.
far.
Yeah. For sure. And again, going back to ASA, when we are going to, evaluate players and talk to parents and be realistic, right? And if we can help them, if we can't help them, and realistic in their targets, like, you're a mid-pack OPDL player, and you're saying, oh, I want to go, Division 1 on a full ride. Well,
Right.
chances are it's not going to happen, right? So there's definitely, tempering expectations of players, but probably more so parents, because
Yeah.
because I was one of those people, right?
Yeah.
I was on the other side. Now looking back, I can say, oh my God, I was thinking, oh wow, if this, my kids don't play here, they'll go play Division 1 and all this kind of stuff, right, in my head. And then when you got right down to it, like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is much more difficult to navigate and to get on one of these teams, because the competition is just crazy.
Oh yeah. Right.
So it's very difficult for sure. So that's our goal, is to definitely help
Good.
players navigate that, and in with as much as integrity as possible, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's just talk about your store quickly. You got 5 locations. Right now I think you're sitting at the Burlington store.
Correct.
Yeah. So overall, your store, give us a little bit of a background. What if I come in your store, what can I expect? I can get shoes, I can get everything, right? Everything.
Anything soccer,
Right.
World Cup jerseys, club licensed jerseys, your Liverpools, your Juventus.
Right.
Yeah, we supply uniforms for clubs and
Right.
walk-in teams. So it's pretty much almost anything to do with soccer. We
Right.
we cover it.
Yeah. I know, and for everyone that's watching, it's a great story. I've been there many, many times. And if
Yeah.
you want to go see
20
Paul, you see him, you have an espresso, and you get your son or daughter a nice pair of shoes.
Yeah, 25 years now, 25 years.
Wow. So that's funny because I remember coming to the first time I met you, coming to your Burlington location, but you were at the old location, just
Yep.
down
Yep.
the road there. Yeah, I remember coming there for, I think it was for because my son was still playing soccer.
Right. It was
I
your
think
son first for the
the
goalie club.
keeper. Yeah, so he always said, "Oh, I got to go back to Absolute because I need new gloves. Every 6 months, he needed new gloves. But he was killing me." Yeah. Okay, so I want to end the podcast with some rapid fire, just fun.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Most underrated skill in soccer.
Underrated skill, communicating, talking on the field. I think that's I call it a skill because it's not automatic, it's you got to bring it out of them, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Do you think girls communicate less than boys?
Yeah, oh yeah, 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 for sure. They're scared to offend each other. They're scared, you know. The most communicating they do is, we get a good laugh when a player will take like a real half-ass. I want to call it a half-ass shot. Just just want more content on hearing the rest of everybody yell, "Nice try, nice shot." I get upset at that. I'm like, it was absolutely not a nice shot. It was just to hear other people say nice shot.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
So communicating for me, yeah. Sorry, I wasn't very rapid, but
That's
communicating,
okay.
I consider that a skill.
Okay. One thing a player should do daily.
Just train, like I mean, anything. Train. Just want to be on a ball.
Right. Okay. Favorite formation.
I'm changing I'm starting to like a 4-2-3-1, but I always enjoyed a 4-4-2 diamond.
Right. Favorite pro team and why?
AS Roma. And my father was born in Rome, but I started liking them back, in '82 with Bruno Conti, from the '82 World Cup. That was probably my first biggest memories of soccer, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, I started following, watching them all the time,
Yeah.
and then they had they called him the Prince of Rome. He was the same last name, Giannini, on that team.
I remember.
He played on the '90 World Cup team.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a Roma fan too. So there's not many of us.
No, no,
And
no.
I became a Roma fan. So when I was younger, Ascoli was up in
Yep,
Serie A
yep.
for a
That's
short span of time. I
yep.
got to actually see them play at Everwind Stadium against Rangers.
That's right. Nice.
And then I did see Roma play Celtic when they came to Toronto that one year way back. With Totti
Yep,
was Totti and Duras was still on that team.
yep.
So I'm a big Roma fan as well. So when us dropped down, I became a Roma fan because I have cousins in Rome, and
Yeah.
I didn't want to follow the rest of my friends and teammates who were either Juve, AC, or so. Okay, and last one. Favorite player all time?
Professional player?
Yeah,
Ian, I'll go with Totti. Totti or Battistuta.
okay. Oh wow, but
Yeah.
because he had a spell there in Rome when he was.
Yes, the last time they won it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he was great,
But
and then he was really he
that's
was good.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But for sure, Totti. Yeah.
yeah. So
Is it? Yeah.
my favorite. Yeah, yeah. He's I loved all of the. Not only did I love all the way he played, but
Yeah.
I just loved his personality. Right,
Yeah.
just everything about him was he was just absolute like just all over the map, and you see
Yeah.
those videos of him like playing a game in the mud, and he's going so hard, and he's trying, I was like, this guy's. I just remember '86. I was sitting in my living room in '86, and when the game against it was in Mexico, Argentina against England, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking this guy's unreal, just unbelievable. And then when he played in Napoli, it was just
Yeah. Next level.
yeah, it was unbelievable. Anyways, Paul, thanks for being with us today. We'll definitely do this again because we could probably go on and on all day long.
Yeah.
So again, I do appreciate coming on, and we'll chat soon.